Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, fellow speakers, and to our students joining us online. I would like to welcome you all to our virtual conference, uh, Turkish Literature as a Political Platform at the University of Cyprus here in Nicosia, and to thank each of our speakers for taking part in this event. Well, we have a lot to cover today and tomorrow, so we really should begin. Please allow me to welcome the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, Professor Antonis Balasopoulos, for the opening speech. Professor Antoni, please.
Thank you, Ahmed. Dear Ahmed, esteemed colleagues, esteemed guests, it's an honor and a pleasure to have received an invitation to say a few words to you today on the occasion of your conference on Turkish literature as a political platform. As a topic, it is of great personal interest to me, as my own research has concerned the relationship between literature and the political in the Anglophone context. As academic members of the School of Humanities, many of us here at UCY are preoccupied with questions of the sort that I believe will concern you as well. For example, with the relationship between literature and nation building, the place of literary narrative in fashioning the so-called imagined community of the modern nation state, with literature and the state, whether in occasions of synergy or on the contrary, in contexts of antagonism and contestation between writers and states or state apparatuses, as in the case of the great Turkish writers Nazim Hikmet and Orhan Pamuk, with the role of literature in challenging official narratives about the historical past and in delving into sensitive political issues, including those of the oppression of national minorities, with literature and the pressures of political commitment. We are proud here in Cyprus to host one of the few Turkish and Middle Eastern studies departments in the Greek-speaking academic world, and we are particularly proud of the fact that as a department, it is committed to understanding modern and contemporary Turkey, as well as Ottoman Turkey, as a complex cultural whole, rather than one-dimensionally and reductively as a geopolitical antagonist or enemy. The conference you're participating in is, I think, particularly poised to address questions such as those I briefly sketched above in the late Ottoman and Turkish context. There is, to take one example I'm particularly interested in, a talk on Turkish literature as world literature and on the politics of world literature theory. I note in passing that my own department is in collaboration with the Institute of World Literature, hosted at Harvard University, and that we are currently, as a school, in talks for a new graduate program on the Mediterranean and the world in collaboration with another school here at UCY. In the fascinating volume co-edited by the speaker you're hosting now, Professor Burku Alkan, we learn that in a sense it is opposite rather than merely conjunctural that the great German philologist Erich Auerbach, author of Philology and Weltliteratur, wrote his magnum opus Mimesis in Istanbul, the great cosmopolitan counterpart to the Paris of the 19th century. Beginning in the late Tanzimat period, the emergence of modern Turkish literature witnessed the flourishing of a multilingual production of texts, not only in Turkish, but also in Greek, Armenian, Bulgarian, French, and Ladino, as we learn from another scholar, Fatih Altug. Further, in such texts, even a single language could be rendered in multiple scripts, so that we have Turkish language literature written in Greek, Armenian, and Arabic scripts. On the other hand, the increasingly felt need for modernization meant an increasing receptivity to quote-unquote Western forms such as the novel, and thus to a complex and ambiguous attempt to explore relations between the local, the national, the international, and the transnational. After the dethronement of Sultan Abdul Hamid II and the declaration of the Second Constitution in 1908, A number of bilingual literary journals appears in Turkey, but the experience of the Balkan Wars provides a turning point, essentially blocking the evolution of a multilingual and multicultural literary activity and providing a strong impetus for arguments for a clearly national literature, which then dominates the period of the rise of modern Turkey after 1923 and after the script reforms of 1928. This Republican literature, however, did not have easier political or aesthetic tasks. It had to have absorbed Western literature sufficiently to be both modern and rationalist, while aspiring at the same time to make an international impact, to achieve translation and circulation in the world literary market, just as the national reading market was becoming more culturally and linguistically homogeneous than ever during the Tanzimat years. By the end of the War of Independence, after the Ottoman defeat in World War I, as Altug notes, and I quote him, the population of the region had radically changed, and wars, massacres, forced migrations, and population exchange shattered the material basis for alternative, meaning non-nation state-based, literary imaginations. Still, Nazim Hikmet would write his Angina Pectoris in 1948 as the Greek Civil War was growing to an end that spelled defeat for Greek communists, and the Chinese Civil War was leading in the opposite direction, signaling in the opening lines of his poem a new kind of international and political orientation, that of the socialist and communist movement, and thus a new kind of global simultaneity that involves struggles somehow interconnected despite their geographical, cultural, and linguistic differences. If half my heart is here, doctor, the other half is in China, with the army flowing toward the Yellow River. And every morning, doctor, every morning at sunrise, my heart is shot in Greece. Hikmet, it is perhaps redundant to remind you, became one of the most beloved and sung poets of left-wing Greeks. As Altug notes, his work was translated not only in the languages of the socialist bloc in the 1950s and 1960s, Russian, Bulgarian, Polish, etc., but also into Arabic and Persian, making him the first, perhaps, world-renowned Turkish writer. Others, like the British Turkish Elif Shafak, on whose Cypriot themed The Island of Missing Trees, there is another talk at this conference, or Orhan Pamuk, who received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2006, would follow. Throughout its history, then, Turkish literature has been deeply politicized, both because its thematic material, language, and even script were shaped by war and revolution, and because it could not but respond to national controversies and upheavals, from the Cyprus conflict in the 1960s and 1970s to the military coup of 1980, to the ongoing tensions with Kurdish populations, and to, I presume, the attempted coup of 2016, the clashes in northern Syria, and the new refugee crisis as a result of the Syrian war. It has not been, by and large, a pleasant or peaceful history, but literature rarely thrives on smooth terrain, particularly when its provenance is historical and political. That is to say, fundamentally concerned with dissensus, conflict, and violence, as well as with sometimes catastrophic change and the psychological and emotional adjustments human individuals, communities, and societies have to make in response to. I hope, dear colleagues, that you have a productive and exciting dialogue on some of these issues in the conference you will be attending during today and tomorrow, and I extend the warm welcome of our school, even though it is still unfortunately virtual, to all of you. Thank you.